Hello, I'm Graham Dale. Brexit recovered our national sovereignty to once again become a self-governing, independent, and free nation, proudly taking our proper place in the world. Being sovereign and free enables us to pursue policies which are specific to our own particular needs. One such area is, of course, the economy. What I found particularly frustrating since Brexit are the lies and propaganda disseminated by the Rejoiners about the UK economy and what they claim to have been its dire economic consequences. They make statements they claim as fact, but which on cursory analysis prove to be based on discredited or misrepresented research. A good example relates to a report by the American think tank, the National Bureau of Economic Research. Rejoiners love to cite this because it sustains their argument that Brexit has had dire consequences for Britain's economy. The report claims that Brexit has reduced UK GDP by as much as 8% since 2016. Whereas real-world data demonstrates that this can't be correct. The actual recorded economic data shows that the UK economy grew by 12% since 2016, better in Japan, Germany, Italy, and France. If the estimated 8% loss of GDP is added to the actual figure of 12% gain, Britain's GDP growth since 2016 would have been an amazing 20%, bettered only by the US in the whole G7. This is a most unlikely outcome. However, why let the facts get in the way? The claimed 8% hit to GDP is still trotted out and swallowed whole as unchallenged fact. Rejoiners claim that it is essential for Britain to rejoin the EU customs union to boost our trade and increase our wealth. None of them appear to fully understand what a customs union actually is, what it does, and how seriously damaging it would be to Britain's international trade and our post-Brexit free trade agreements across the world should we rejoin. Do they not realize that when Britain was in the customs union, 80% of the tariffs collected by HMRC at our borders were paid over to the EU, with only 20% being retained? For example, our post-Brexit customs tariff revenue for 2023 was £5.5 billion. Every penny of that was retained by HMRC and put into the government coffers to spend exclusively in Britain. Had we been in the customs union, 4.4 billion of it would have been sent to Brussels. What rejoinders never talk about would be the huge and annually repeated costs to Britain of rejoining. Firstly, there is the annual membership fee, a colossal sum of money we previously sent to Brussels each year for them to spend on their vast running and administration costs, subsidies to special interest groups, such as French farmers under the CAP, and the infrastructure and development costs of the new and poorer states. In my view, Britain was rendered poorer through our membership by the huge transfers of our wealth to countries such as Spain, Portugal, Italy, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, the Baltic states. So successful have we been in transferring our wealth to others that Poland will have a higher GDP per capita than Britain by 2030. Well, I hope that pleases somebody. It doesn't please me. In the 6 years since Brexit, we have saved a total of about £125 billion in gross annual fees. Some of this will have come back as grants for EU-approved projects, but how illogical, how inefficient and demeaning that we finance a process to become a supplicant of the EU bureaucrats to plead for the return of some of our money to be spent in our own country, but only on EU-approved projects. Truly a master-servant and banker-borrower relationship. The central point is, not having sent £125 billion to the EU, that money was available to spend entirely within Britain on projects elected or selected, I should say, by our government and determined to be in the best interests of the British people. The annual membership fee does not include billions of additional financial commitments to the EU foreign aid programme or other EU projects that are billed and paid for separately. If we rejoined the EU today, our annual membership fee will be 12.5% of the EU's annual core budget. This budget was set for 2026 at €193 billion, thus presenting us with an annual fee of over €24 billion, which is about £20 billion. But that's not the end of it, not by a long chalk. There's a veritable smorgasbord of expensive delicacies that we would be obliged to pay for. For example, Starmer has already committed Britain to rejoin the Erasmus student exchange scheme at a cost of £570 million in year one. This fee will undoubtedly increase annually. This demonstration of Starmer's unrequited infatuation with the EU has meant the sacrifice of our own Turing scheme, which better served British students at a miserly £74 million per annum by comparison. The EU has introduced an annual plastic packaging charge to deal with plastic waste, to be paid by all member states. Britain's share would be about £1 billion a year. Britain has its own carbon border adjustment mechanism, due to commence in January 2027. This is estimated to produce up to £1.8 billion in revenues for the Exchequer. If we rejoin the EU and their similar scheme, 75% of the revenue raised will be paid over to the EU. Starmer's bewildering reset of the fishing agreement with the EU has already created a cost estimated at £9 billion in lost fish stocks. Should Britain rejoin the EU, we would almost certainly be browbeaten into accepting a proportionate part of the contingent liability on €800 billion of COVID recovery loans under the Next Generation EU programme, plus €150 billion under the Rearm Europe plan. That's a total of €950 billion of contingent liability, which in a worst-case scenario, Britain's share would be 12%, or €114 billion. That's £100 billion. Why take on such a risk? Are Starmer and his Rejoiner chums totally deranged? Finally, there are 9 European countries applying to join the EU over the next decade, all of which will be large net recipients of EU funding. It's estimated that the EU will accordingly need to increase its budget, and thus the contribution of the wealthier members, Britain will of course be one, by 21% per annum. Britain's putative membership fee would thus increase from 24 billion euros to almost 30 billion euros, which is 26 billion pounds per annum. Why transfer our wealth to fund the development and infrastructure of faraway countries of which we know little, when we can't even fund the repair of our own potholes? And finally, a little tidbit by comparison. By being out of the EU, we save £150 million every time in not holding their parliamentary elections. Thank you for listening.